Welcome to the video. Before we begin, I suggest you subscribe to the channel, and we begin. John had a tough childhood. His parents divorced when he was just 5 years old, and he was raised by his mother, who struggled to make ends meet. Despite her best efforts, John often went hungry and was forced to wear hand-me-down clothes that were too small or too large. As he got older, John became more and more withdrawn. He struggled to make friends and found it difficult to trust people. He spent most of his time alone, reading books and playing video games. One evening, John was walking down the street when he saw a woman with a baby being harassed by a group of men. Without thinking, he rushed over and chased the men away. The woman, who introduced herself as Emily, was grateful and invited John to stay with her for the night. John felt a sense of relief as he settled down on the couch with a blanket and a pillow. Emily's baby, a little girl named Lily, cooed softly in her crib. John fell asleep, feeling safe and secure for the first time in a long while. But in the morning, John woke up speechless and frozen. He looked around the room, trying to make sense of what had happened, and then he saw it, a photo on the wall of Emily, her husband, and Lily. Emily's husband was John's father. John's mind raced as he realized the truth. Emily had been his stepmother all along. His father had remarried and started a new family without ever telling John. The woman he had just saved from harm was his own stepmother. John felt a sense of shock and betrayal wash over him. He couldn't believe that his father had kept this from him for so many years. He couldn't believe that he had been living in the same city as his stepmother and half-sister without ever knowing. Emily tried to comfort John, but he was too overwhelmed to speak. He gathered his things and left, feeling more lost and alone than ever before. As John walked away, he realized that he had never really known his father at all. He had been living a lie, pretending that he was happy and content when all he really wanted was to know the truth about his family. But now, with the truth out in the open, John was faced with a new reality. He didn't know what his future held, but he knew that he couldn't go back to the way things were before. He had to find a way to move forward and make a new life for himself, one that was based on honesty and trust. For days after the shocking revelation, John was lost in thought. He couldn't bring himself to reach out to his father, but he found himself constantly wondering about him and his new family. He was curious about Lily, his half-sister, and wondered if she would ever know about him. One evening, John decided to take a walk and clear his head. As he walked, he found himself outside his father's house. He stood there for a few minutes, debating whether or not to knock on the door. Eventually, he mustered up the courage and knocked. To his surprise, his father answered the door. They stared at each other for a moment, unsure of what to say. John's father looked older, with more lines on his face than John remembered. "Can we talk?" John asked. His father hesitated before nodding and inviting John inside. They sat in the living room, avoiding eye contact at first. "I know I should have told you," his father said eventually. "But things were complicated back then. Your mother made things difficult, and I didn't know how to handle it." John listened silently, still feeling a sense of hurt and betrayal. "I never stopped loving you, though," his father continued, "and I'm proud of the man you've become. I know I can't make up for what happened, but I hope we can try to build a relationship now." It took a while for John to respond. He wasn't sure if he was ready to forgive his father, but he knew that he didn't want to carry the weight of resentment around forever. "I need time," he said finally, "but I'm willing to try." Over the next few weeks, John visited his father's house more and more often. He met Lily, who was just starting to walk, and found himself falling in love with her. He and his father started talking about their shared interests, and John found that he enjoyed spending time with him. As the days passed, John realized that he was slowly starting to heal. He still felt hurt by his father's past actions, but he knew that he didn't want to let that hurt define him. He decided to take a leap of faith and trust his father again. One day, John was playing with Lily when his father walked into the room. He looked at John with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry for everything that happened. I hope you can forgive me." John looked up at him and smiled. "I do," he said. "I forgive you." And with those words, John felt the weight lifted from his shoulders. He knew that the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but he was ready to face it with honesty, forgiveness, and love. As the days went by, John continued to spend time with his father, stepmother, and half-sister. He found himself growing closer to Lily, who was always giggling and reaching out to him. He was amazed by how much she had grown in such a short time. One day, John was holding Lily when he heard his phone ring. He saw that it was his mother and hesitated before answering. He hadn't spoken to her since the revelation about his father and stepmother. "Hello," he said tentatively. "John, it's your mother," she said. "I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing." John sighed. He knew that this conversation was long overdue. "I'm doing okay," he said. "It's been a lot to process, but I'm trying to move forward." "I know I made a lot of mistakes," his mother said. "I wish I could go back and do things differently." John felt a surge of anger and sadness. He didn't want to rehash old wounds, but he couldn't help feeling resentful about the past. "It's not just about you, Mom," he said. "It's about all of us. All of the lies and secrets that we've been keeping from each other. I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust anyone again." His mother was quiet for a moment. "I understand," she said finally, "but I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me, and your father too." John felt a pang of guilt. He knew that forgiveness was a process, and he didn't want to let his anger consume him forever. "I'll try," he said, "but it's not going to happen overnight." Over the next few weeks, John tried to find a balance between his past and his present. He spent time with his father's family, but he also made an effort to reach out to his mother and rebuild their relationship. It wasn't easy, but he knew that it was the right thing to do. One day, John was walking with Lily in the park when he saw a man sitting on a bench playing a guitar. The man had a kind face and a friendly smile, and Lily seemed fascinated by the music. John approached the man and struck up a conversation. They talked about music and life, and John found himself opening up about his recent struggles. The man listened patiently and nodded sympathetically. "Life can be tough sometimes," he said, "but it's the tough times that make us stronger. You just have to keep moving forward." John felt a sense of peace wash over him as he listened to the man's words. He realized that he didn't have to carry the weight of his past with him forever. He could choose to let go and embrace a brighter future. As he walked away, holding Lily's hand, John felt a sense of gratitude for all of the people in his life who had helped him on his journey. He knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but he was ready to face them with strength, resilience, and love. That night, John put Lily to bed and sat down at his desk to write in his journal. He wrote about the man in the park, about his father and stepmother, about his mother, and about Lily. He wrote about the weight of his past and how it had been lifted just a little bit by the man's kind words. As he wrote, John heard a knock at the door. He got up and went to answer it, wondering who could be visiting him so late at night. When he opened the door, he was surprised to see a woman he had never met before. "Can I help you?" he asked. The woman smiled nervously. "I'm sorry to bother you so late," she said, "but I think I might have something that belongs to you." John frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a small bundle of papers. "These were in a box that I bought at an estate sale," she said. "I didn't know what they were at first, but when I started reading them, I realized that they might be important to someone." John took the papers from the woman and stared at them in disbelief. They were old letters and photographs, some of which he recognized from his childhood. He felt a lump form in his throat as he realized what he was holding. "My mother must have sold them without my knowledge," he said. "Thank you so much for bringing them to me." The woman nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said. "I hope these can bring you some closure." John nodded, feeling overwhelmed. He thanked the woman again and closed the door. He sat down at his desk and spread the papers out in front of him. He saw photos of his parents when they were young, letters between his mother and her friends, and even a few pictures of him as a baby. As he looked through the papers, John felt a sense of sadness, but also of gratitude. He realized that his past would always be a part of him, but he didn't have to be defined by it. He could choose to move forward and create his own future. With heavy heart, John gathered the papers together and put them back in the box. He knew that he would treasure them forever, but he also knew that it was time to let go of the past and embrace the present. As he went to bed that night, John felt a sense of peace wash over him. He knew that life would continue to be challenging, but he also knew that he had the strength and resilience to face whatever came his way. And with Lily by his side, he knew that he had all the love he needed to keep moving forward. The next morning, John woke up feeling lighter than he had in years. He got out of bed and went to check on Lily, who was still sleeping soundly. As he watched her, he felt a deep sense of love and protectiveness wash over him. He realized that, despite the challenges he had faced in his life, he had been given a second chance to be a good father to Lily. He could break the cycle of abuse and neglect that had plagued his own childhood, and give his daughter the love and support she deserved. John made a vow to himself and to Lily that day. He would do everything in his power to be the best father he could be. He would provide for her, protect her, and love her unconditionally. As he made breakfast for Lily, John couldn't help but think about the woman who had brought him the box of papers. He wondered who she was and why she had been drawn to him. He made a decision to try to find her and thank her properly for what she had done. He felt like she had given him a gift not just the box of papers but also a new perspective on his past and his future. John spent the next few weeks searching for the woman, asking around at estate sales and secondhand shops. Finally, he got a lead from a local antique dealer who recognized the box of papers. He tracked down the woman, who turned out to be an elderly widow living in a nearby retirement home. When he met her, he was struck by her kind eyes and gentle demeanor. She told him that she had felt compelled to find the rightful owner of the box, and that she was glad she had been able to help him. John thanked her from the bottom of his heart, and the two of them talked for hours about their lives and their experiences. He felt a connection with her that he couldn't quite explain, but he knew that she had played an important role in his journey. As he said goodbye to her that day, John felt a sense of closure that he hadn't felt before. He knew that he would never forget the woman who had brought him the box of papers, and he felt grateful for the unexpected ending to his journey of self-discovery. With Lily by his side and a newfound sense of purpose and hope, John felt ready to face whatever the future held. He knew that life would never be easy, but he also knew that he had the strength and resilience to overcome any obstacle. Years went by and John kept his promise to himself and to Lily. He raised her with love, support, and patience, and watched as she grew into a confident and independent young woman. As Lily started college, John found himself with more free time than he had had in years. He decided to take up a new hobby, something that would challenge him and keep him busy. He started taking pottery classes at a local community center and quickly fell in love with the art form. He spent hours at the pottery wheel, creating beautiful vases, bowls, and plates. One day, he received a call from the retirement home where he had met the woman who had brought in the box of papers. They told him that she had passed away peacefully in her sleep, and that she had left him something in her will. John was surprised and touched by the news. He went to the retirement home to collect the item, and was given a small wooden box with his name on it. He opened the box to find a letter from the woman, explaining that she had always been drawn to his kind eyes and gentle demeanor, and that she had felt a connection with him that she couldn't quite explain. She told him that she had seen something special in him, something that reminded her of her own son who had passed away years ago. The woman had left John a substantial amount of money, and a note encouraging him to use it to pursue his passion for pottery. John was moved to tears by the woman's kindness and generosity. He realized that the unexpected ending to his journey had brought him not only closure but also a new sense of purpose and direction. He used the money to start his own pottery studio, where he created beautiful pieces that were sold all over the country. He felt a sense of pride and satisfaction in his work, and knew that the woman who had brought him the box of papers would have been proud of him too. As John sat at his pottery wheel, creating something new, he thought about the unexpected twists and turns that his life had taken. He realized that every moment, every experience, had led him to where he was today. He felt grateful for the love and support of his daughter, for the kindness of the woman who had brought him the box of papers, and for the unexpected ending that had given him a new lease on life. And as he continued to create beautiful pottery, John knew that he would always be guided by the lessons of his past and by the hope and promise of his future. Years went by, and John's pottery business flourished. He became a well-respected artist in his community, and his work was featured in galleries and exhibitions around the world. But despite his success, John never forgot the woman who had brought him the box of papers and changed his life forever. He kept her letter in a special place in his studio, and often thought about the connection they had shared. One day, as John was working in his studio, he received a surprise visit from Lily. She had brought someone with her, a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that reminded John of the woman who had brought him the box of papers. The woman introduced herself as the granddaughter of the woman who had helped John all those years ago. She explained that her grandmother had often talked about John and the impact he had had on her life, and that she had always regretted not being able to get to know him better. John was touched by the woman's words and felt a sense of connection to her that he couldn't quite explain. They talked for hours about their lives, their passions, and the unexpected twists and turns that had brought them to where they were today. As they said goodbye, the young woman gave John a small wooden box, just like the one her grandmother had given him years before. Inside was a letter, written by the woman before she passed away, expressing her gratitude for the impact John had had on her life, and encouraging him to continue pursuing his passion for pottery. John felt a sense of closure and peace as he read the letter. He realized that the unexpected ending to his journey had come full circle, and that the connection he had shared with the woman who had brought in the box of papers had led him to a new connection with her granddaughter. As he sat in his studio, surrounded by his beautiful pottery, John felt grateful for the unexpected twists and turns that had shaped his life. He knew that he had been given a second chance to be a good father to Lily, to pursue his passion for pottery, and to connect with kind and generous people who had changed his life in ways he could never have imagined. And as he thought about the woman who had brought him the box of papers, John knew that her kindness and generosity would live on in his heart forever. With the memories of the past and the hope for the future, John continued to create beautiful pottery, inspired by the connection he had shared with the woman who had brought him the box of papers and her granddaughter. He used his art to express the emotions that he had kept bottled up for so long, and to communicate the lessons he had learned about love, loss, and resilience. As he worked, he found himself thinking about the unexpected twists and turns that had shaped his life, and he realized that the journey had taught him something valuable about the human experience. He understood that life was unpredictable, that it was full of challenges and opportunities, and that every experience had the potential to teach us something new. But most importantly, he learned that no matter how difficult the journey may be, we are never truly alone. There are always people around us who are willing to help, to support, and to guide us if we only have the courage to ask. And so, John continued to create beautiful pottery, inspired by the unexpected twists and turns that had led him to where he was today. He knew that there would be more challenges to come, more opportunities to learn and grow, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. Because he had learned that the unexpected ending to his journey was not the end, but only the beginning of a new chapter in his life, and he was grateful for every moment, every experience that had led him to where he was today. As the years passed, John's pottery business continued to thrive, and he became known as one of the most talented artists in the country. He even passed on his knowledge to younger generations, teaching them the craft that had saved his life. But despite his success, John never forgot the lessons he had learned from the unexpected twists and turns of his journey. He continued to cherish the connections he had made, and to be grateful for the kindness and generosity that had saved him when he needed it most. And then one day, as John was working in his studio, he received another unexpected visit. It was Lily, who he hadn't seen in years. She was older now, but still had the same spark in her eyes that had first drawn him to her. She hugged him tightly and whispered in his ear, "I'm sorry for all the years I wasted, Daddy. I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me most." John smiled and hugged her back, feeling a sense of closure and peace that he had never experienced before. "It's all right, my dear," he said. "I forgive you, I always have." And in that moment, John realized that the unexpected twists and turns of his journey had led him to the one thing he had always wanted most, a connection with his daughter. Together, they sat in his studio, surrounded by the beautiful pottery that John had created over the years, and talked for hours. They talked about the past, the present, and the future, and John felt a sense of hope that he had never felt before. Because he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with Lily by his side. And so the unexpected ending to John's journey became the unexpected beginning of a new chapter in his life. A chapter full of love, connection, and the endless possibilities that come with each new day.